Professor Andrew Zamani, the outgoing president of the Nigerian Psychological Association. It's been quite a challenge, very tiring, very demanding, but also a very exciting journey. It's really a great delight for me to see a very vibrant association from a lame duck that I took over from 6.5 years ago. I have learned through the maze a lot about people, a lot about systems, and a lot, on what it takes to be a leader. Mistakes were made, but overall, God helped us. We were able to garner goodwill from from the entire membership of the Nigerian Psychological Association, and with their cooperation, we have gotten to where we are. Now, one of the things that really brought about the landmark successes that we achieved as an ESCO was a team spirit. I had a very wonderful set of colleagues who served in the ESCO. We were like a chain, each one dovetailing into another. There was no standalone person at all. And so we coordinated very well. We, even with the dearth of resources, no money, and so on and so forth, we're able to hold virtual meetings. We're able to communicate on the WhatsApp platform. We're able to sometimes just communicate by email, and a few times by phone. And through all this, there was no fear, no anxiety about being misunderstood, that somebody would misrepresent or deny issues that had been discussed. So it's really very, very exciting. So we worked together, and probably that's why we went far. I had a dream. That's what leadership is all about. You must have a vision. You must have an objective. You must have targets to meet. We had the first target was to mobilize membership. Number two was to build confidence, to make people interested. And then number three was to expand the platform of leadership. And what we did was to define leadership not by position, but by roles. So even a student, an undergraduate student, could play a leadership role in my administration. I gave everybody the opportunity to express themselves, and I discovered that that is what really helps, for you to recognize people for who they are and what they can do. And so many people in the process discovered themselves, and because they discovered themselves and they were appreciated in the process, they began to show commitment. And I want to say that if I were to rate the commitment of members to the cause of the association, it's 98%. So I saw today from yesterday. I think that first we have to define the leadership. We have to define the leadership that you have just mentioned. For me, leadership is the cream of people who have the ultimate say. And those who have the ultimate say, for me, are the ordinary citizens. Did they feel the impact of psychology during my tenure? Did they hear about psychology during my tenure? Did they benefit from psychology during my tenure? I would say yes. In my official responsibilities, people felt the impact. The lecturer that I am, people felt the impact. Not just my psychology students, they felt the impact. And most of the time, when they asked deeper questions about me, they were told that this is the president of the Nigerian Psychological Association. And so, there was an unconscious uh, stereotype of me in many people as the psychologists that represents others in Nigeria. Um, so, in a way, yes, the 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 grassroots felt the impact. If leadership in this context means those in the position of authority, with specific mandate to deliver on certain targets, I would say yes, again, we have achieved because what we started to do was to network and to sensitize leaders, of our presence uh, in Nigeria. Uh, but beyond that, to establish a friendship that one could benefit from subsequently. So that networking and the development of interpersonal relations, from day one helped a great deal. I'll give you an example. Um, when we started the advocacy for a scheme of service um, for psychologists in Nigeria, it was a very hard task. Those who started the struggle had worked on that document for about four years, you know, before I took the project over. And what I did was, as soon as I got the document, I just called up somebody in the presidency to say, "Hey, look, I have this issue. Can you intervene for me at the office of the head of service? You know, I have a presentation that must be taken, that must be approved, that must be acted upon." And you know, a way was paved for me. Contacts were made on my behalf. I was given the opportunity to do a presentation, and my presentations were taken. They were examined, or they were examined and validated through a nationwide tour. And once the people felt that I was right in all the claims that I made about psychologists, they had no choice but to recommend us. Um, you would have noticed during the opening ceremony that one of the people that came was a friend that I had made long ago. He was made an honorary fellow of the Nigerian Psychological Association while he was in Germany. He was here. The person who represented the First Lady, is one of such people that, has been a long time personal friend and a friend of the association.
As a fellow of this very important association, I feel very proud to continue to be with the association, and I promise in whichever way I will continue to give my support.
So I made everybody who was my friend from the onset a friend of the association, and so when challenges came up, we had to leverage on that, and thank God, things are still paying off. In the legislature right now, we have a very strong presence. That's another area. We have a very, very strong presence. It's such a very beautiful experience, I thank God. Well, first of all, I don't think I even need a position to 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 do the needful. What we have done so far is first to accept the fact that nobody gives you power on a platter of gold. You have to struggle for it. If you do not say, I am, nobody will say, thou art. So, my philosophy has been, to stand up and to be counted. Psychologists must fight their cause. They must announce, they must pronounce themselves. They must carve a niche for themselves in governance. And to some extent, in the process of selling psychology to the entire nation, we factored in the public interest. And that public interest is what is benefiting the association right now. You will not believe. We have a presence now in the highest office of the land. The wife of the president aptly described the activities of the NPA over the past 6 years, as though she was there when we started. And that means that right there in her office there are people who know what we are doing, and they believe in what we are doing, and they commend us for what we are doing. What, however, I feel that psychologists should do to make their presence felt in government is that they should be creative, they should be innovative, they should be aggressive in the kind of roles that they envisage for themselves in the corridors of power. Psychologists must become politicians also, in order for them to deploy their intellectual and practical resources to build the nation. And I assure you that once they do that with a sense of purpose, they would be recognized. They'll be given the space that they need, and even beyond. So that's the issue right now. Another thing that I want to say is this, that psychologists must demonstrate competencies in the things that they do. If you have a professional responsibility or role to play, then you do it competently. You do it with a lot of zeal, commitment, and with a demonstration of great aptitude and ability. By so doing, you endear yourself to people. People would marvel, who is this? How is he able to do this? They want to find out what makes you think. And once these qualities of excellence are identified in you, you will just be a recurring name, for psychological services, if you are one, all the time. So that is a major issue about it. Psychology in the corridors of power, relevance of psychology to governance. What would I have done differently? I'm not sure I would have done anything more differently than I have done, except to say that given more time, one would have continues in the course that I charted, to ensure that all the set goals from the beginning are achieved. I'll tell you one thing that I think I have a star. I think I have a star. There's nothing that I lay my hands on that fail. And why do I not fail? Because I don't undermine anybody's role. Once I have a need for someone to help me, I communicate it and I give the person the respect that they deserve. This success is not really due to anything that I have done that is really outstanding, other than to invite my students. My students organized this. They were members. Most of them, over 75% of them, are my students. They are my students, whom I just mobilized and gave them a task and said, make this thing happen. And as they met and strategized, they gave me feedback, and I kept giving them advice, to the extent that most of them would go and source money to say, hey, look, we think that the LOC needs a loan. Tell professor that we are willing to give this much, in order for the next activity to take place. So there was no halt. People felt honored by me to invite them into the organizing committee, and the recognition, the daily recognition of the roles that they play, also I think motivated them and inspired them to this level. Now, on my own part, I didn't even realize I had built such a very wide, strong and formidable network until today, that I saw my old-time friends who came in because they saw the advert in the social media, or somebody forwarded it to them by email and so on and so forth, or they had radio announcements and they just felt they must identify with me. So what I would encourage people to do is not to despise relationships. Especially old-time friendships should never ever be despised, because you just don't know when you will need the help that will either give you a breakthrough or that will give you a giant leap. Like right now, I'm already consulting for the New York University, and the area in which I consult is not in my primary area of professional training, but because of the experiences that I've garnered over the years, and the fact that as a scientist, I am a world-class scholar. It's been possible for me to provide advice to people in settings that are not local to me. So if you ask me to respond to needs, either in academia or elsewhere, I would be very glad if it doesn't clash with any activity of mine or with the activity of the third party. The attitude is to be a reliable friend and a professional. Once you have these qualities, the corridors of power will open up to you, and what needs to be done would be done, as far as getting recognition is concerned. maybe you should know today that one of the things that I fear most in life is failure. I am one of those who believe that he who puts his hands in the plow and turns back is not worthy. Um, we really had um, challenges with funds, because despite the communes that are poured on the membership of the association, one of the areas of major weakness is um, um, not living up to their financial obligations. And as a leader, where it is possible, you make up, for the financial deficits or the requirements of the day. I lost temper once or twice, but it didn't really deter me, because no sooner than I did, I would realize that because that leadership role was a calling, I would have to submit and surrender everything to God to help me sort out. And usually He shows up. At the nick of time, He shows up. Maybe I should also launch from the last question that you asked me. It would interest you to know that in my heart, I'm a mentor. And by training, I'm also a mentor. I did training in academic mentoring many years ago at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. I believe very strongly that every young man who needs to grow or develop, either in the workplace or elsewhere, needs a mentor. And so I have availed myself many times to young people, who need guidance and support to present themselves to me in a manner that they would expect to benefit, and in most cases, because of the mode and way by which I have received them, they have been most happy. And as a matter of fact, right now, it is possible for you to find, a phenomenon called the Zamani boys factor. Everywhere I've worked, there have been students who just got very strongly attached to me because of what they envisage they would benefit from me intellectually and otherwise. So my advice to the incoming ESCO is that they should open their doors to people, but they should be circumspect in exercising judgment so that they are not misled. Number two, I would advise that they should work together as a team in order to achieve common goals. And then finally, I would advise the incoming ESCO to be a listening ESCO, because you can't be right all the time. And if you can't be right all the time, it means that you by yourself should create a room, for certain possible weaknesses that you're likely to have. Having said that, I believe that the best parting gift to give them is prayers, and I know that prayers will work. I've told you, God shows up each time we have needed Him to help us out of our challenges. The foundation has been very well laid, and because I told you I run a leadership style that is inclusive, many of them already in touch, no matter how far. For instance, Darlington here is a student of Delta State University, Abraka. Initially, he didn't plan to come, but when I put a call through to him, he began to rush down. When I needed high-profile people in the community to recognize, he gave me a suggestion. I went ahead and spoke with the person. That's been my style, and it has helped out a great deal. So I feel that that is the line to talk. It's really very difficult to say because most corrupt officials are roaming the streets as free citizens, and those who stole 5 naira soap, are wallowing in prison for petty theft. It's an irony, isn't it, that somebody who stacks billions and billions of US dollars can no longer be touched, can't be touched at all. Why? They are just converted into sacred cows to ensure that good things don't happen in Nigeria. My take on this is that once we are able to determine our direction, obtain a shared vision, we will pursue it collectively. And in doing so, I believe very strongly that success will always be achieved.